Good day, everyone. We are reviewing Wetzel's Limnology textbook, edition number 4, chapter 4, and we are in subchapter 3, Origin of Lakes. But before we do get into this section, let's look at some of the figures that are included in that section. So the first one is figure 4-10, example of glacial lake types. So it highlights in a drawing format, like the different types of lake types, glacial lake types that we have. So we have the bedrock dam lake, so where we have bedrock here, and then we have a lake that is dammed by the bedrock. We have ice dam lakes, where we have lakes that are pretty much like prevented to flow due to the presence of ice dams. So there's an ice dam here, and there's an ice dam right here. There's a landslide dam lake. So there was a landslide on this slope of this mountain and created a lake, and that is dammed by the glacier. Then there's a moraine lake, dam lake. So there's a moraine here that is damming this lake. Now let's look at 4-11. So several small cirque lakes or tarns and paternoster lakes with a mountain group from which several converging cirque headed branch troughs all join the same trunk trough. So we have different kind of lake types in a glacial environment as well here, but it's a little different than what we just saw. So the first thing is we have this sort of glacial trough. So there used to be a glacier here, and it left this sort of trough. Then we have cirque lakes, and cirque lakes are usually pretty high in the mountains. We have cirque lakes here. Then we have paternoster lakes. So usually paternoster lakes are glacial lakes that are connected to each other and that are found kind of like in a string. So we have like 3 lakes that are consecutive of each other that are linked by those little streams between each other. Then we have a hanging valley. So meaning by that there is a pretty steep slope in this area here, and that prevents the water to flow to the base flow without going through a waterfall or through a pretty drastic change in elevation right there. Then let's look at different types of lakes that we have here. So we have the cirque lake we just reviewed, a tectonic lake, which is seismically driven, a landslide lake. We have a volcanic lake that is taking the shape of a former volcanic area. And then we have an oxbow lake, where that is formed by a meandering river and that closes off and creates a lake. And then we have a lagoon lake, they're usually found in bays. Now let's look at this figure, which is the formation of various types of kettle lakes. So top panel, an outwash plain of retreating continental ice containing ice block. And the bottom panel, lakes form in the outwash plain and morainal till. So here we have a continental glacier, we have an ice margin, we have ice blocks in outwash plain, and we have till, and this is before the lake formation. And so now let's say that the glacier has receded, so it's leaving this footprint, because you can see here that we have the till pattern that is the same here. And then here we had a block of ice that was part of the glacier, but at the same time left a depression in the till. And so that creates then a kettle in drift and a lake in irregular ground moraine right here. Then we had this ice margin, and so it created a moraine. So we have a kettle lake at ice contact on terminal moraine. And then all these little ice blocks created kettle lakes in pitted outwash. When the ice melted, it basically left a pattern of depressions in the moraine and allowed water to accumulate to create those little lakes. And then figure 4-14 are thermokarst lake formation and evolution in ice-rich permafrost, A through D continuous and E through H discontinuous zone. So right panel, Landsat 5M satellite image showing thermokarst lake rich regions, so the Selawik Wildlife Refuge interior in Alaska, which is located in western Alaska. We have the North Slope coastal plain, which is in northern Alaska. Then we have the Chukotka River region in northeastern Siberia. So the difference between continuous and permafrost and discontinuous permafrost is continuous permafrost is continuous, as it says. So pretty much like where permafrost is prevalent and doesn't have areas where permafrost is not found. Where here we have discontinuous permafrost. So that area here is an ice lens. This is the legend, and then this is an ice wedge, and then so you can see that around that piece of ice there is no ice. There is no, so it is discontinuous rather than here where we have the continuity of the ice. Okay, and then we have lake waters in blue, and then unfrozen ground in brown. So looking at the continuous permafrost, this is the initial stage. We have ice wedges, and we have ice-rich permafrost here. Then we have thermokarst lake inception. So we have these trees that are falling, and it's sort of called like actually a drunken forest. And as the ice is melting, so it's creating kind of topographical change. So this is the same pattern than in B. However, we are starting to see the presence of unfrozen ground below that future lake. And then lastly, we have the mature stage of the continuous permafrost, where we have a lake. We have what is called talik, which is unfrozen ground, and we have some leftover ice wedges. It is a very different pattern in discontinuous permafrost. So we have this unfrozen ground in brown, and we have, once again, the ice lens in gray. And so this is the initial stage, and then we have the start of a little pond above the ice-rich permafrost here, and the ice lens. And that lake starts to grow as the ice lens is starting to melt. And ultimately, the ice lens melts and leaves this lake, this impermeable soil sealed clay that prevents the lake from draining out, and this is why it's naturally impounded. All right, so let's move on. Let's get into the section here. Okay, origin of lakes. So the origin of lakes and their morphometries are much more than casual interest. The geomorphology of lakes is intimately tied to physical, chemical, and biological processes occurring in the water body, and plays a major role in the controls of a lake metabolism within the climatological constraints of its location. The geomorphology of lake controls the nature of its surface and underground influxes and outfluxes, including the inputs of nutrients to the lake, and determines the relation of influx to storage volume, for example, the lake's water renewal rate. This pattern, in turn, can affect the distribution of dissolved gases, nutrients, and organisms. So the entire metabolism of freshwater systems is influenced to varying degree by the geomorphology of the water body and how it has been modified throughout its subsequent history. The shape of a lake water body, namely the depression occupied by the lake water, can influence its productivity. Steep-sided U or V-shaped lake depression, often formed by tectonic forces, are usually deep and relatively unproductive. In such lake, a proportionally smaller volume of water is in contact with sediments. Shallow depressions with a greater percentage of contact water with the sediment generally exhibit higher productivity. The following brief resume on the origin of lakes is based on Hutchinson's summary of the subject. Hutchinson differentiates 76 types of lakes on the basis of geomorphological inception. This detailed classification has been variously modified or amended subsequently, but essentially stands intact. The discussion here is limited to the 11 main group of lake types, slightly rearranged from Hutchinson, each formed by different processes. Some lakes have gone through stages of mixed origin and formations. A. Lakes formed by glacial activity. By far, the most important agent in the formation of lakes are the gradual but nonetheless catastrophic erosional and depositional effects of glacial ice movements. Land surfaces that are now glaciated include Greenland and several smaller Arctic islands, Antarctica, and numerous small areas in high mountains throughout the world. These contemporary glacial activities are small, however, in comparison to the massive Pleistocene glaciation that advanced and receded in 4 major episodes of activity in the northern hemisphere. With the retreat of the last Pleistocene glacier, approximately 10,000 years ago, an immense number of small lakes were created. Lakes of glacial origin are far more numerous than lakes formed by all other processes combined. The action of glaciers in mountainous regions of high relief usually produces lake types that are quite different from those that result from the movement of large continental ice sheets on regions of more mature and gentle relief. A number of lakes, often temporary in nature, occur on the surfaces of, within, or beneath existing glacial ice masses in areas of transitory thaw. For example, numerous meltwater sub-ice lakes, several kilometers in diameter, occur 3,000 to 4,000 meters below the Antarctic ice sheet. In high mountain regions, the front and lateral arms of glaciers, as well as terminal moraine deposits, supported by the ice, often function as effective dams in river valleys that impound lakes which fill almost entirely with glacial meltwater. Glacial ice scour lakes include a vast number of small lakes formed by ice moving over relatively flat, mature rock surfaces that are jointed and contain fractures. The ice scour lakes are particularly common in mountainous regions where glacial movements have removed loosened rocks material along fractures. When the glaciers retreat and the scoured depression in the rock formation fill with meltwater. Such glacial scour lakes can be found in large number in the vast Canadian Shield region, on the upland plains of Scandinavia, or in the United Kingdom. A frequently occurring type of ice scour lake forms in the upper portion of glaciated valleys in mountainous areas where the valleys are shaped into structures resembling amphitheaters by freezing and thawing ice action. The amphitheater-like formation is referred to as a cirque, and lakes within such depression are cirque lakes, also called tarns. Water is held in the cirque depression either by rock lip above the depression or by morainal deposit. Cirque lakes, which are generally small and relatively shallow, less than 50 meters, are often found in tandem arrangement within a glaciated trough of a mountain valley with the higher lake hanging above the lower succeeding lake in a stairway-like fashion. True cirque lakes, which are common to all major mountainous regions, are formed at approximately the firn line, i.e., the line across a glacier that indicates the transition from constant freezing to seasonal thawing. When the glaciers extend well below the firn line, the corrosive action of the ice can form rock depression within a glacial valley. When such depressions form a chain of small connected lakes at successively lower elevation in a glaciated valley trough, they are referred to as paternoster lakes. Where there are mountains adjacent to the sea, as in many areas of Norway and Western Canada, fjord lakes can be formed within narrow, deeper depressions in glacially scoured valley. Where continental ice sheet encountered weak areas in primary basal rock formation, glacial scouring of lake depression occur on a massive scale in a non-mountainous Piedmont area. Great Slave Lake and Great Bear Lake in the central Canadian subarctic region are examples of scouring of pre-existing valleys to very great depth by ice sheet movements. The most impressive examples, however, of large lakes produced by glacial continental ice erosion are the Laurentian Great Lakes of the St. Lawrence drainage. As continental glacial ice sheets retreat in the late Pleistocene, vast amounts of rock debris moved and incorporated into the ice during former advances were deposited in terminal moraine and laterally to the lobes of the retreating glacier. These deposits dammed up valleys and depressions in an irregular way and filled up with water either as they were below later groundwater levels or by meltwater and drainage from the surrounding topography. Morainal damming of pre-glacial valleys, usually at one end, but occasionally at both ends, created many of the numerous lakes of the glaciated northern United States, including the distinct Finger Lakes of New York. In regions glaciated by continental ice sheets, a very common process of the formation of lakes was associated with the deposition of meltwater outwash left at the border of the retreating ice mass or with blocks of ice buried in the debris. The major feature of the so-called kettle lakes that form in this manner, which account for the origin of thousands of small lakes of North America, are shown in figure 4-13. Glacial drift materials was deposited terminally and washed out into plains, often containing large segments of ice broken from the decaying glacier. As the ice blocks melted, the morphometry of the resulting depressions was modified variously by the overlying rock debris. The ensuing lake depressions are highly irregular in shape, size, and slope, corresponding to the irregularities of the original ice blocks. Kettle lakes often exhibited variable underwater relief with multiple depressions separated by irregular ridges and mounds. These lakes rarely exceed 50 meters in depth. Their shallow water body is related to the limiting depth of crevasse formation in the fracturing of the terminal glacier. Most Arctic lakes result from glacial activity, as discussed earlier, or are cryogenic lakes formed from the effects of permafrost. The most abundant type of water body found in the Arctic is the shallow pond formed inside of an ice wedge polygon of raised soil banks that grow above the permafrost from water seepage through cracks in the surface of the ground. Eventually, polygonal networks of ridges are formed that often contains ponds from 5 to 50 meters in diameter. Millions of these ponds exist in coastal northern Alaska, Canada, Greenland, the flat regions of Siberia, and other high-altitude areas. The shallow ponds may coalesce into larger ponds or larger amount of ice deeper in the permafrost that may help, especially if the plant cover is distributed or destroyed, and thereby forming thermal-karst lakes. Some lakes form in the thawed craters of pingos, small conical hills scattered over tundra plains. The tundra, okay, especially in the North American Arctic regions. Water from previously insulated soil can rise by hydraulic pressure through cracks in the permafrost, but is overlain with alluvium and tundra vegetation. The water freezes and forms a mound or pingo. The overlying soil can rupture and the ice of the depression can thaw to form small pingo lakes. Pingos are intra-permafrost ice-cored hills between 3 and 70 meters in height and about 30 to 1,000 meters in diameter. They are typically conical in shape and grow and persist only in permafrost environments such as the Arctic and subarctic. A pingo is a periglacial landform, which is defined as a non-glacial landform or process linked to a colder climate. It is estimated there are more than 11,000 pingos on Earth, with the Tuktoyaktuk Peninsula, which is located in the Northwest Territories, having the greatest concentration of a total of 1,350 pingos. There is currently limited data on pingos, so this is what the way it looks like, a pingo on that peninsula in northern Canada. It looks like there's another one here, but obviously there's one here. So why don't we look at how they are formed? So we have kind of two types of pingos. We have the closed system type, and then we have the open type. So the closed system type, we have here infilled a lake. We have water. So this is a lake under normal condition. Then we have frozen sediment that is overlying this water. Then we have this lake in the winter month where we have this permafrost overlying this ice. And then we have a mound that has collapsed, and then the lake in the summer month. So here we have this pingo with this permafrost, with this lake below the permafrost. So this is a closed system or hydrostatic pingos. And this is an open system, or formation of open system pingos. So here we have an active layer, which is unfrozen ground. We have permafrost, and then we have talik, and then we have these islands that is starting to grow. And then we have artesian pressure, meaning by that we have like liquid groundwater coming this way, and that is raising this mound of earth here, of unfrozen ground, I believe. So in the text, we have hydrostatic pingos. Closed systems, also known as hydrostatic pingos, are formed as a result of hydrostatic pressure that has built up within the core of pingos due to water. And then hydraulic pingos, which are the open system, result from groundwater flowing from an outside source, for example, subpermafrost or intrapermafrost aquifers. Hydrostatic pressure initializes the formation of the ice core as water is pushed up and subsequently freezes. So this water here is going up through artesian pressure and freezes and created this ice lands that ultimately raises the ground. Open system pingos have no limitation to the amount of water available unless the aquifers freezes. They often occur at the base of slopes and are commonly known as Greenland type. And so these are the areas of the world where we have pingos. We have Greenland, we have Canada, we have Alaska. So approximately 80% of Alaska is covered in permafrost, with 29% of this continuous permafrost and 35% discontinuous permafrost. And throughout Alaska, there are more than 1,500 known pingos. And actually, Alaska has the tallest pingo known in the world, which is the Katlewoshchilik pingo. And that is 54 meters in height, and is continuing rising in elevation by a few centimeters a year. And I believe this is located in the North Slope, or the frozen lake, Lucille Lake here in the Matanuska Valley in Alaska. And the way it looks like about a few days ago, that were taken by a drone at different elevation. So here we have the Alaska Range on the right, and this is to the north. So we're going to be moving west. The sun is setting. It's going to be setting on the left side here. And you can even see that there are some folks that have driven on top of the ice of the frozen lake here.